What is your biggest non-academic, non-work-related accomplishment? Johnny5128 said, I work for a major game company. You'd be surprised how much fan art is shared among people on the floor. If you think it's awesome to have your work recognized by well-established artists, it's equally awesome for us to see people so dedicated about our games that they use their precious free time to create art about it. Keep doing fan art. It can be a great motivational factor for many people, even if they rarely show it. PPPRP said, not quite as cool as actually making money to play, but I advanced to the third round of Apple Idol, Applebee's Karaoke. Lost in the final four. 1-0. Edit, thanks UEBED08 for the silver. AskReddit said, I won the first Swedish Nationals in indoor wingsuit flying. It's also so far the only Nationals since the only tunnel is in Sweden, which makes it even sweeter. To be fair, there wasn't a lot of competition, only one other team that were close to us, but I guess being part of the sport early on is part of the accomplishment. Kendrick Fisher said, when I was a kid, I saw a guy passed out drunk on the side of the road. Neither of my parents noticed, so I said something. We went back and my dad went to check on him. It was around 20 degrees Fahrenheit out and he was wearing a thin jacket and pajama pants. My dad, who is a paramedic, told me I quite possibly saved his life that night. Edit, worded weirdly. iHeartSquirrel said, I had something similar. I was driving down a 2-lane road one night and saw an upside-down electric wheelchair. I thought to myself that's an expensive thing to trash, and then I saw an arm reach up. The poor guy couldn't talk and only had one working limb. He was cursing down the road and caught the edge and flipped. His chair was too heavy and the landscape wasn't conducive for me to flip it alone. I called the ambulance, which was 20+ min out, and tried to flag passing cars down. No one stopped for about 10 minutes, 60 or so cars. Finally a truck stopped and the guy was able to help me flip him back up. Frank 3000 said, same. Except I found the nearly passed out girl, wearing black, laying in the middle of a dark, snowy road winter in Breckenridge. I was afraid she was roadkill at first. She said she was just taking a quick nap when she came to, but she probably would have been shortly had we not gotten her up and going and back to her apartment. Not much in the way of survival instinct in that one. Antonita said, I did hypoxia training in the Air Force years ago. Buddy next to me was getting really hypoxic in the pressure chamber we were in, just having fun, smiling, doing little mazes on the paper we were all given, would not put his mask on until we all yelled at him to put the damn thing on. I couldn't think clearly after about 20 seconds, this dude was fucking around for almost a minute, having a time. Hypoxia isn't a joke, it will trick you into having a good time while it fucks you up. Then you pass out. If you are trying to operate a plane when this happens, you die. Slay Susan said, I just used the recipe from Sure Gel Box, which calls for 7 cups sugar and 5 cups crushed strawberries, with 1 packet pectin and half a tablespoon of butter to prevent foaming. It's super easy to make, although I recommend going to a farm to get your berries instead of using grocery store berries. It makes the perfect gift. Fetanos said, running the table at pool where after the other person broke and I sank every single one of my balls in the 8th ball in one turn. I'm not usually good at pool. A stranger came up to me, said it was one of the greatest things he's ever seen. I think about this often, lol. Strikedoutber said, my stroke recovery. I can walk, use my left hand, and I can cook again. Things are perfect, but considering that I couldn't pick my head off of the pillow the day after last Christmas, I am doing fantastic. Ross Taylor 3D said, my mum had a stroke at 23. She had 1 beer and everyone though she was drunk, slurring her words. She ended up getting home and trying to sleep it off. A woman she ended up on the ward with in hospital did the same thing and died shortly after. My mum was super lucky. She lives alone and struggles, and it's absolutely heart-wrenching to watch as she's now getting worse. I try my best. Hey GFY said, I was sexually abused by a priest dozens of times during a 7-year stretch of my childhood. I blocked all the memories, drank away the memories, but when I was around 23, I had a conversation with someone which caused them to resurface. I spoke to a lawyer to see if there was anything I could do. The criminal statute of limitations, 2 years from the time the abuse ended or 2 years from the victim's 18th birthday, was long gone, so I ended up filing a civil lawsuit. He was removed from the priesthood and we settled out of court. As it turns out, he did the same thing to more than 75 other little boys during an 18-year span. But because I spoke up and did something, the statute of limitations for sexual crimes against minors in the state of Illinois was eventually removed. I don't know if that counts or not, but I'm pretty grateful that what I went through wasn't completely for nothing. Zach Pact said, I'm 5 years clean from heroin at 25 years old. I was an addict from a young age, started with opioids at 16 and by the time I was 19 I was a junkie. Edit. Thanks for all the love, guys. If you know somebody struggling with addiction, please tell them to be safe. I will recommend seeing a psychiatrist for combination therapy with a counselor as a way to ease into rehabilitation. 7-0 said, Grats. Shit is so much harder than an outsider would think. I also started really young too, 15, heroin, oxy, meth, add crack and criminality by 17. I feel like you get so much more fucked up psychologically when you start that young. I quit at like age 28, and by that point I'd only ever really known adulthood through the lens of intense desperation, addiction, and from a sort of outlaw perspective. It's been 4 years and I still feel like I'm that guy, though I don't act like it, talk like it, or anything else. I don't know. Recovery is weird. Sorry for turning your comments into an impromptu AA share, haha. Congratulations again though, dude. Quitting heroin easily dwarfs the next like 5 hardest things I've ever done combined. Shit is a fucking monumental accomplishment. A View from the Top said, I stood up for myself with my family and set boundaries. Then I actually kept them. I had a very abusive and traumatic childhood. Standing up for myself when I was a child always resulted in pain of some kind. This was a huge step for me. After Hangover said, I came across an overturned vehicle and some kids screaming driving from Oklahoma to California. Dead of night, winter, middle of nowhere. People weren't stopping but I did. My ex-wife didn't want to stop but I snapped at her. Turns out a girl had been thrown from a vehicle. Her legs were bent the wrong direction. Applied a makeshift tourniquet and got some blankets from my U-Haul. The truck driver stopped and helped me. He called for paramedics and I helped them carry her over the snow ice. Words said. One time when I was a kid, I was chasing my sister around the house with a wiffle ball bat, you know, like how kids do. She took off up the stairs to the second floor and tried to lock herself in the bathroom at the top of the stairs. As she was slamming the door shut, I threw the wiffle ball bat like a javelin and it blocked the door from closing. This happened 30 years ago and it was literally the most athletic I have ever felt in my life until I ran a mile non-stop as a 44-year-old guy. Goodbye Feline said. I somehow survived 2018 despite having up to 70 seizures a day. I didn't even have a stroke. I am seriously hard to kill and it makes me proud. Edit. Yes, I have tried cannabis and CBD oil. Edit again. Please, for the love of God, people, stop asking me if I've tried the ketogenic diet or essential oils as well. I can only take so much. 6 Gun Chimp said. I briefly became a published comic book author as a side hustle. My first issue sold out at a retailer level across the globe on day 1. Super proud of that. Edit. Okay, wow, this blew up. I just want to take a moment to thank every single person who took the time to express that they've heard of Dr. Crow or better yet read or purchased a copy before. You have no idea how much that means to me on a personal level, but on a professional level I linked my publisher to this thread and they've now agreed to publish a collected edition of Dr. Crow. You read that, you Seth Littrell's alt? It's coming. I can't thank you folks enough for helping make this reality. It was literally you guys discussing Dr. Crow that will make a collected edition a reality. Thank you. This has happened extremely fast so I can't provide more info right now, but if you'd like to try to keep up to date on info regarding the collected edition of Dr. Crow, give me a follow over at Twitter and be sure to follow 215 and can let them know you want more Doc Crow. Thank you so much for your support. You've made a bitter man extremely happy today. JVVG12 said. I've photographed every train station on the Cleveland subway. There are nearly 50. And I'm currently nearly halfway through photographing every station on the Chicago L. My photography is probably my proudest accomplishment since it's really the one thing I've done completely on my own terms. Edit. For those who want to see my photos, They're all available at https://www.flickr.com/photos/Jacob-X/. Level 20 Mallow said. I walks and hitchhikes across the United States to escape the abusive community I grew up in, and rebuilt my life across a continent, against all odds, when by all respects I should have been dead by now, whether killed at the hands of someone in that old community, or by starvation or exposure. Now I'm in a position where I have a good job, am relatively stable, began writing again and am going to start making games again. Maybe even paint again, if I can get therapy to undo the damage that was done that took away my ability to. So there's that. Level 20 Mallow said. Thank you, D. I'm not quite there yet, I still have some issues but I'm working through them. I really wish I could find a therapist or someone to help me undo all the psychological damage and the knots and the horrible programming done that made me unable to paint. I would love to get back into it again. That's the only real major hurdle left. And to everyone else out there, it is 100% possible to escape your nightmares. If anything, going to a new environment that is outside of their ability to control you is the best way to deal with serious abusers, since now you'll be able to grow without their knowledge, which takes away their ability to abuse you. You can give yourself a future and a hope. It is possible. Mara Wall said. I beat a debilitating phobia that kept me from living my life. Fuck, it's the first time I say it, and truly realize it. I was in therapy for 5 years before COVID stopped it all. And I'm as well without therapy. I didn't regress at all. The phobia hadn't come back and doesn't control me anymore. I don't need therapy anymore to stay afloat. I will go back to it once I'm fully vaccinated because it will still help. But it's not a necessity to survive anymore. I need to find a good way to celebrate that. Mara Wall said. It was emetophobia. It's the fear of vomit or vomiting. It was a severe case, so severe that I stopped eating thinking that if I had an empty stomach, then I absolutely could not vomit. Also to avoid food intoxication. Fun fact, never had food intoxication. Always been good at spotting something that was spoiled. But still. Lost a lot of weight. I was 38 kilograms for 158 centimeters, at my worst. I'm back at 47 kilograms right now. I would only travel by foot or bike. Any other mode of travel has the risk to make me motion sick. Anything that you can imagine to give motion sickness, including shows or movies with shaky image, was an absolutely no-go for me. Fun fact, I never ever had motion sickness. Not even while I was on a boat on the sea in the middle of storm. I had panic attacks at the mere idea that maybe someone, or myself, could maybe feel sick. At the worst, I would panic attack if someone burps too close to me, if someone cough in a certain ways. Mara Wall said. I wouldn't go out. Parties involves alcohol. Alcohol lead to people vomiting. No way I go to parties. Flu seasons and stomach virus season was hell on earth for me, and I'd put myself on lockdown. I could not enjoy any entertainment. A lot had people vomiting. For some reasons, people like to show emotions with having being sick. I was tense because I fear by anticipation that such scene would appears. At times, I couldn't do my job, because well my brain cooked up multiple scenario on why it could be sick, or witness me being sick. There's a lot of other stuff I did or didn't do when I was ill. But the kicker, when I really got afraid and started to take therapy seriously. I underfed my 5-year-old niece during one meal, for fear that she would overeat and get sick, and there was no one else but me in the house. Why and how I got this? Well, first thing first, my brain is wired to have an anxiety disorders. My dad had one. His dad had one. My great-grandparents likely had one. Undiagnosed because well it didn't had name at the time, but great-grandma had nerve issue. Why this one in particular? Apparently, when I was 4, my single mom got sick. Seeing her being sick made me feel sick, but with no one to care for me since my mom was really sick. According to therapy, this put the seed of the phobia. It grew gradually with every other trauma I suffered from there. Trauma related to vomiting, but also trauma not related to it. And I did not have a lucky childhood with many loss, big accidents with severe injuries, and bullying, among other things. Instead of developing PTSD, depression or other issues, each hit just feed the phobia. To the point that this little seed that started out unnoticed became a full forest. Beep Borp Imajorp said. I've survived this long, lol. I keep getting back up like those inflatable clown punching bags. Really sick as a child, they thought I had myasthenia gravis but it went into remission. IDK if that's what it was, or if it was some other mystery autoimmune condition. As an adult I have celiac and Hashimoto's, so autoimmune conditions seem to just be my default. Had a spinal canal tumor which got removed. Then almost immediately they found an ovarian cyst the size of a golf ball, so I had surgery to get that whole mess removed. I have some chronic issues but I'm alive, healthy, relatively, own my home, and managed to take care of my pets. I've also managed to keep up with the hobby, finally. And I decided this year to finally get my master's. I know it's an academic accomplishment but I don't have the degree yet, it's just that I finally decided to get off my ass and better myself. Every time someone asks how I'm doing I reply, I'm alive. And they chuckle thinking I'm cracking a joke. I'm not. I am genuinely thankful to be alive. Elegov21 said. Technically occurred during school hours, but this is the only thing I remember, so PLZ no bully me. Back in middle school somebody sitting a few rows behind me, for whatever reason, decided to chuck a pencil to the front of the classroom. This pencil would fly directly above and to the left of me. For whatever reason, I subconsciously decided to reach out and grabbed it out of the air without knowing it was coming at me from behind. Was some weird superhero shit. I then proceeded to get yelled at by the teacher because I couldn't stop laughing. I count it as an accomplishment. Primitive T-Bugger said. I was one of the first 3 Xbox players in the world to max out the regenerations for the EM4 Cold War Grenadier Primary in Titanfall 2. I know it's not exactly the most noble accomplishment, but aside from maxing it out, I also had to develop a unique playstyle to overcome the weapon's disadvantages at a high skill level. I taught a lot of other players how to be successful and have fun with it. It was a fantastic time playing with and getting to know other top Titanfall pilots, some of them being the more popular streamers of the game. Jinaki said. I saved a woman from a terrible man. It was St. Patrick's Day and I just got done with my bartending shift, so it was around 2 a.m. I was hungry, so I went to this really popular burrito place, one of the few places open at that time. Because of the holiday it was packed, drunk people clogging up the restaurant and spilling out into the street. As I walked up I noticed this guy making his way away from the crowd, caveman carrying a woman. She looked very drunk, but no one was paying much attention. As soon as they caught my eye, he stumbled and dropped her and she hit her head hard and then just laid there. He started to try and pick her up again and I ran over to stop him, since I was worried she'd hurt her neck. He was immediately defensive, and I just got this real bad vibe from him. She was conscious, but barely, and unintelligible. I asked him if she'd taken anything and he said no, so I said okay, well then I'm calling an ambulance because she can't even talk. And he said no, that's not from a head injury. He just remembered he'd given her some muscle relaxers cause her ankle was hurting, which is also why he was carrying her. He said his van was nearby and he'd just drive her home. I said, "Oh, so you're friends with her?" And he said yeah, they were on a date. I asked what her name was and he said Jackie. Well, she had her wallet on her and I opened it up and it said an entirely different name, I think Samantha. I'm like, no way does he know her, and the whole time he's just pushing me to let him take her, saying that she wanted to go home with him. I should just mind my own business, she was fine, blah blah blah. Luckily at this point people at the restaurant are starting to notice, so I call over to ask if anyone can come help, if anyone had a medical background. A couple of girls start to come over and as soon as they do he gets real angry, tells me I'm a dead bitch and that he'd be coming back with his friends, and takes off. The girls, who were nurses, called an ambulance and waited with me, and I never saw that fucker again. I shuddered to think what would have happened if I hadn't looked over and seen him drop her. Stormker said. Wholesome seal of approval being a father to a broken family. My wife had 2 kids when I met her. Stepping in and becoming dad was the only choice I could have made. We had 2 of our own and I quickly became a father of 4. I wasn't ready. Furthermore, these kids had suffered abuse, from grandma, and uncle, and had many behavioral problems. My life stopped progressing and I became a first responder putting out fires and trying to do what's best for the kids. Disowning extended family on both sides meant raising these kids with just my wife and I. Therapy, counseling, occupational therapy, parenting classes, Love and logic classes, hearings, nurse visits, it never ended. Non-stop, full speed, crisis after crisis after crisis. Finally, they are all healthy and happy. They each have an area of talent that they are pursuing. They know about investing, financial planning, politics, world history, American history, how to get into college, how to study, where to find resources for help, and how to know when friends are genuine. That's really just scraping the surface. So much more went into raising these kids than I ever could have imagined. I just knew that if I wasn't going to be father to these kids, no one else would do it. They were on a path headed for destruction, and I, along with my awesome wife, changed their futures into something bright and filled with hope. Now I'm drained. I feel like the salmon who struggled to swim upstream only to spawn and die. Nobody will really know the amount of work we put into our kids. There's no parenting Olympics, no medals, no recognition. All I know is my kids will help make the world a better place.